Are you listening? Damn.
Hello, sports fans. My name is Leroy Marc.
And I'm Tami Ruschin.
I brought her back. She's back.
Sorry,
Yay.
I missed the last
You are traveling,
one. I'm traveling.
Living your best life.
Trying.
Trying. Welcome to the Business of Influence podcast with me, Leroy Marc and Tami Ruschin. And today we have a guest because, we bring nice people into the studio. It is Wilmarie van der Merwe.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I also love how y'all are so fashion forward. Y'all are looking
Stunning,
so
hey?
I like that.
Love it.
For the first time, I feel underdressed. In the company of good people, Wilmarie is the head of digital over at Total Exposure. And today we're discussing everything to do with sort of, newsjacking and real-time marketing in the digital age.
I'm really
you see something
excited
on
about
Twitter.
this one.
You excited?
Yeah.
I am always on Twitter. I was on X, always on Facebook, and you see something happening today, and then brands are catching on to it, but tomorrow, so quickly. And I'm like, do you guys have 1,000 people who are sitting in the background who are just making things happen?
So I haven't actually personally worked on a campaign like that. So I'm very much like you, where I'm like, how does this happen? Do you have a 24-hour service going on? And I think it depends on whether you have an in-house agency or if you, not an in-house team, or you work with an agency. But usually they work around the clock and I think have open lines of communication and lots of WhatsApp groups for approval processes.
Wow.
Because you would need someone to sort of rubber stamp and tick it through. But I mean, we need to chat about you're the head of digital over at TE. You must see a lot of these responses and the things happening where you're like, ooh, my brand must get on that right now. Let's chat about 10 steps back. When you are scrolling on the timeline, are you actively looking for things to sort of match and piggyback your brands to?
Absolutely. It's, I always say me scrolling on social media at work especially, not actually downtiming. I'm actually
it's work.
I'm following,
it's work.
Exactly. I'm following other accounts and I'm seeing what other creators are doing. And you're like, how cool would that be for this client or for this brand? Oh, we could do this or we could do that. It's always in the back of your mind that it's happening. Doesn't always get implemented, which we'll obviously get into. But definitely as you're scrolling, you think in the back of your mind, it would be so cool if we could implement this and how you would do it and the twist, how you would tie the story in with the trend or the thing that's popping off.
I'm always just in awe because I'm thinking about how you need to be so well versed with your brands that you need to be able to spot an opportunity literally sitting in the corner. I mean, Tami, you and I chat all the time about how you need to always be agile and dynamic.
And on the pulse.
And
this
pulse.
is on the pulse too.
This is the pulse. But what is, and this is to both you guys, because I already know nothing about this. What is first of all, what's newsjacking and what's real-time marketing? Because we think real-time marketing is watching it happen on TV as it's happening on the field. Sam?
Take it away.
Well, I think you would be the expert in actually explaining from a definition point of view. But in terms of, it boils down to the social listening.
Yeah.
So what are you listening and viewing that is relevant? And it's about understanding, from my point of view, understanding the current affairs that are happening. And again, that is going to, how is the brand going to leverage off that? So what current affairs, what channels to be on to understand what is happening and the relevant people to watch.
And also because things change so quickly, Wilmarie, right? I always say, a day is too short in South Africa. It just seems like you are, in the morning you're listening to something, in the afternoon there's something
else.
And then tomorrow there's a court case, and then there's a trend coming in, and there's a dance coming the next day.
Yes, there is
so
quick. Yeah.
It's so quick.
And how do you then socially listen to that? First of all, what is social listening even? And how do you even then use that to your brands?
Good question. So social listening and taking a step back to newsjacking also is to be able to newsjack, you need to have either a social listening tool, which a lot more companies and brands are doing, or I suppose I'm a bit more old school, like I do it a bit more manually.
Thank you, me too.
But it's essentially, it's like looking at exactly what you said, Tami, like what's trending, what's happening, and seeing how you can tie your brand onto it, and how you can jump onto that trend to basically market your brand further. And then it has so many benefits to it if it's done properly.
Okay.
There's a lot of cons to it. If it's not done properly, the timing is so important of it. And we just spoke about that life cycle also. You have to get it from like breaking news to like the peak and where people are talking about it. You have to basically jump on it in that trend. I mean, in that like gap in between that and that life cycle. Otherwise, it's old news and people are going to be like, oh, they're trying too hard, or it's old
What
news.
is the time frame? What would be considered as missing the realness and courageousness of
Sure, that's a good question. Because things change so quickly, I think the quicker you can get onto it from the minute the news breaks, because like journalists are also already on it, right? And especially with TikTok, creators are on it already. So they sometimes faster than brands, because they also don't have to go through approval processes and all of that, right? So the minute you kind of see that and start seeing a creator or two here, like go on it as soon as possible. I can't give you a time frame, but I would say no less than 24 hours. Even less if possible.
Really?
I mean, sometimes I guess it depends on the trend as well, or what the current affairs is, what the topic is. If it's something like it's a TikTok trend, you've got a bit more time.
Correct. Correct.
But if it's a bit more topical, sense like news,
political or something like that.
Exactly. That news cycle picks up, like it just changes so quickly. So you just have to be very quick. But I think you have to know your brand and your approval processes as well. Yeah. So if you haven't done this before yet, your approval process could be quite long. If you pitch, like if you work at an agency and you want to do it for one of your brands, you have to pitch it to them, and then if they approve it, there's still a briefing doc, and then it's getting creative approved, right? So then that takes a while.
And hoping no one's on leave on that week, you know.
There better be backups.
And one of the things, like I think America works like quite quickly, because a lot of the trends sometimes, especially on Twitter and X, also like our time difference is quite big. So like a lot of the brands that side, it picks off on that side. By the time we see it, it's already been a couple of hours.
Yes.
So we're already delayed, unless it's a South African topic or a trend. But yeah, I would say the first couple of hours, the sooner you can get started, the better, really.
Are there more industries that favor this type of approach versus others? I know we always speak about your fitness, fashion, beauty, but is it specific type of industries that would leverage off this?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily industry specific, because it really depends on the brand strategy, and what's in the brand's DNA. Like I think Nando's is one of the best examples
so we
of
can
this.
always go back to that.
Always and I don't think it was initially part of their brand strategy, or like when they started Nando's marketing and their advertising. I don't think that was necessarily part of it. But I'm sure they've reevaluated their strategy and gone back and said, is this working?
Correct.
And it's worked for them. But then Duolingo also, they often are quite quick on responding on those things as well. So, and that's a language industry. It's, learning. But fashion brands also jump in. And I think L'Oreal, actually, which is beauty industry, Lancome, I think it might have been with Zendaya, you know which trend I'm talking about. It's the I'm so-and-so. Of course I did. They did that really quickly with their ambassadors. And not all the ambassadors were present. But they were like, it's fine. We've got 3 of them here. Let's just do it. And they turned it around quickly. And what's nice is it doesn't always have to be perfect.
And that's what I was going to get to, that because we understand the real-timeness of it all, like you were mentioning the chicken franchise that does like the ads, the TV ads really quickly. I mean, TV gives us a bit of time. But when you're talking about like a Zendaya, for instance, like a beauty brand, they can jump on it quickly.
So quick.
And I remember recently there was a video that you wouldn't think, and that's what I'm saying, your social listening your infrastructure must be so well attuned to what's happening, because firstly, there's the language barrier, because we're all tweeting in different languages.
Yep. Good point.
Dude, even my... Can I tell you, my streaming platforms on my TV are now in Afrikaans? Let me let you know.
Really?
Thank you. It's a word I made up. Thank you. Because you need, I mean, I'm a South African,
Leroy.
so I speak like 4 or 5 languages, right? So I can at least read Afrikaans, I can read Sesotho, you know. But there was this one video of this guy who was getting out of the car and he's dropping off his girlfriend, I think. And she had this massive bag that was branded and she likes a particular energy drink.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I didn't realize there would have been I mean, I just got annoyed because this poor girl was being like plastered everywhere. But then energy brand tomorrow was like on it, right? And it's so crazy that for me, my question is, when do you know that this is a thing about to bubble under? Or this is just no one will even look twice at this. I mean, not the right people are listening to this thing. Like, how do you...
And then what if you do jump on it and it's not?
Completely bums out.
You know?
It's so interesting because I was thinking about this last night, actually. And I think a lot of it can be pre-planned. So depending on industry. So let's say the Oscars are coming up and you like a fashion brand or a makeup brand. You can kind of prep for stuff like that. Part of the social listening is also being online and seeing those kind of moments. And sometimes, I guess you might just luck out where they were like, oh, this person loves it. They're talking about it. That's what social listening is, in addition to keeping up with trends and keywords and what's happening. It's also, what are your consumers saying about you? Is it positive? Is it negative? Do they want more? Do they want less? And that's how you adjust your strategy, right? So I wonder if it's not just like they saw that and they were like, well, here's someone, like it got a lot of views. Let's just actually engage with them on a personal relationship. And then because of that, and there wasn't the intention to go viral, it just happened to go viral. Like there's that other fast food chicken one where the couple got married. And, that picked up. And almost because more and more people like then spoke about how like great it was that they were paying for this wedding, it gained more momentum. And I think sometimes if you plan too much, like if your objective is to go viral, I personally believe you're not going to go viral.
Well, that's it. Yeah. That's exactly it.
There's certain things you can pre-plan in advance, but there's certain things you can't, and it's trial and error. But your errors, you have to be, I suppose, strategic.
Guys, this topic is making me fizz. Because all I'm seeing is like all the moments I've been online and been like, they really should pay this person because it's amazing. Because the other thing is the name, and it goes back to what you were saying, Wilmarie, about like you really have to know your brand, right? Yeah. Because there was this very cute image of this young kid. I think it's an informal settlement. He had to go buy a loaf of bread.
I was just going to speak about that.
My heart was just like
I was just going to speak about that.
I've never smiled that much for a loaf of bread in my life.
Yeah, exactly.
And it must be that you must be so attuned to also like the secondary and the tertiary sort of flavors of your brand, right? Like if your core brand is like nutrition, like what bread really is, nutrition. And then the second one is like lunch boxes. The third one must be like, food and love and warmth and happiness. You must be so attuned to all the levels of your brand so that you're able to go, this one touches, point number 13,
100%.
you can really zone in.
100%. And I think
go for it.
I was going to say emotional connections, I think pulls heartstrings with anyone and everyone. And it's when that authentic, we're reaching out to you authentically, not to want to capitalize on you, not to want to do anything, but because this made us feel so warm. And we think that this thank you for that. And, and then that amplifies it.
I'm very interested in, you like to do the social listening manually, but from a tools perspective, like, is it keywords? Is it hashtags? Is it? I'm quite interested in the whole setup of how you go about that.
So you do have tools, and I think again, depending on your brand and your industry, and going back to knowing your brand, where do you want to play? If you do want those kind of moments, where do you want those moments to happen? As a makeup brand, for example, would you want to feature in sports? Would you want it to be male sports? Would you want it to be female sports? Depending again on what your brand is. But I think you choose your keywords, you choose your industry. But for anything, actually, I would say it's so important to have your finger on the pulse across all industries. Really, there was a I can't remember now. There was a sports. Actually, it was a sports. Again, it was actually that chicken. It was that chicken industry. That chicken guys. And I think it was a Brazilian one. Don't. And I'm not a soccer person, so please don't quote me on like names and stuff. But there was a lot of like commentary on like this guy missed the goal or something like that, and then Brazil of the Brazil team of this basically commented, and you're like, you want what is it? You want a chicken or you want and right with his surname, and I was like, chicken technically doesn't have anything to do with sports, but that doesn't mean your sports audiences don't
Got you.
Eat it right.
Got you. This is so fascinating.
So this leads me, I'm telling you, I'm getting the fizz.
I know.
Because my other question then from that is, when you're looking at, as you say, like chicken doesn't have, anything to do with sport, what are you trying to get out of it? So indulge me for a second. When I send you a drop at your house and I say, hey, Leroy, here's a whatever, I post, you get the engagement, people see you, they align us together.
Visibility,
It might translate to sales, but more visibility is what
Yes.
you're getting, right? But when you're just like saying a funny quote, or you've got a graphic or some sort of asset that you put out really quickly to be part of the conversation, what is the return then on investment? Because all of this infrastructure that you've put together, costs money, to have.
Oh, and what are the KPIs?
And what are the KPIs? And what are you looking for, so that when we look at and we've gone viral and we go, guys, this one,
Let's do it again.
The three before were great, but this is the moneymaker. What are you getting out of it?
I think everything we do needs to always have an objective to it. You can't just be doing things for the sake of doing things.
Yeah.
You need to be like, why are we doing it again? It goes back to the DNA of your brand.
Yes.
And yes, sometimes it is important. Like sometimes you just have a lucky moment from a social media management perspective where you respond to a tweet, for example, you comment on it and they were like, good one, actually.
Quirky.
That was great. But I think it is exactly that. When you identify an opportunity, not every opportunity you have to jump onto it. You have to be able to tie in a story.
It has to be strategic.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like how is this going to benefit my brand, or how is it going to benefit our brand outside of thinking awareness, consideration, conversion? Is it like that chicken brand always kind of is like they end up driving their
some plate of food
kind of
that they're
some plate
selling.
of
Yeah,
food.
got you.
But then that drives loyalty, and it draws, it engages new audiences, and you're like, I just love this brand, because you're like, I love their marketing, could translate into that. Other times, the shareability of it gets you a lot of share of voice, so it gets your word of mouth essentially out there. So it's tough to say, like from what I've done, that there is that you can say, oh, we're going to drive sales from this.
Yeah.
You might, though, in your messaging be like, actually, this could be, it's always an option, you know?
But then, so yes, there's the earned media, the engagements, everything that you report on. Does the brand give you specific KPIs to achieve? Or because it's so, can I use the word impulsive?
Yeah, I was using a worse word and say like haphazard. Like it just feels
Spontaneous.
like spontaneous.
Yeah, exactly. That, do you have to reach X amount of something?
I don't think so. I think a lot of it, it would be haphazard to put KPIs to that, because you don't know.
Okay.
It could go viral, but does viral mean, like on Twitter, when you trend, you need a certain amount of mentions,
Yes.
Is
And
that
usually that's a bad thing.
Yeah, right? So it's like, it's tough to say that there's KPIs to it.
Okay.
I guess it's a broad KPI, like we want share of voice or share of conversation, or we want, because you also can't measure how many new customers you've got into that, because you don't know how far and wide this is going to go.
Absolutely.
KPIs, I think, are important in the sense that you just need to be able to tie a relevant story to the moment, so that you don't miss the mark.
Got you.
So it's not like completely mismatched where people are like, you're trying too hard. You should have set this one out.
In my mind, Wilmarie, what I'm getting is that this is the part of your suite of tools, or Tami, you'll have the English for me. The suite of products that you would get from TE, from Style ID, to say, okay, we have stuff. We've got your earned, your paid, your owned stuff going on right there. But you can't miss a good opportunity if it's there. If all it takes is for us to just listen, which we should be doing as a brand anyway, to what's happening around us all the time. And if you can find a moment, because even then, and I love what you say about timing, right? Because timing is so crucial for us to be able to even have the creativity to turn a moment into a marketable moment.
Yeah.
What I mean by
and
that
a
is
story. Yeah.
Yeah, what I mean by that is, if we if I propose to Tami, sorry, Gav. If I propose to Tami and we have a moment and it happens to be like in a mall and everyone is taking a video, it's so easy for us to go, us as we'll pay for this part of it. It's quick, it's instant, and we get a bit of a moment. But when we see a baby, holding a loaf of bread and we go, ooh, that's a moment. What do we do with this moment quickly? Do we do billboard? Do we tweet it? Do we Instagram it? Do we post it? And it's also having to have the creativity to say, let's not just tweet it. Why don't we do a quick billboard? Can we do a quick thing on the news tonight? You need to find the moment. And for me, it's just like the intersectionality of so many moments.
So many, and I'm so used to the forecasting and the planning and the 6-month strategies.
I'm
Then
the
3
same.
months
I am mind blown.
No, I'm exactly the same. I think I
Constantly
get a
kept
bit
on your
like,
toes.
this would be so cool. But okay, what does this look like? What's the execution like? Is it going to look like what we visualize it to be? But I think that's when you have to have a really strong team.
Yeah.
And you have to have really strong lines of communication and trust.
Yeah.
Really strong levels of trust.
Yeah.
Whether it's in-house or whether it's a brand with an agency.
Okay.
You guys need to, and I'm sure you can also agree with that. It's you need to have a strong level of trust because
Absolutely.
And I think that's where preparation. So if you do want to eventually end up doing those kind of things and partaking in that, maybe it's not part of your strategy now, but part of your long-term strategy, maybe trial and error it, even if it's just behind the scenes. And then as an agency perhaps, and you're like, this would be really cool if we did this. This is a quick little mock-up of what we did. What do you think?
Oh, I have some ideas for style ID now.
You see, so it's...
Well, here's my question then, because my lawyer mind always thinks about how we don't have the infrastructure available for us to be able to be so dynamic and spontaneous, safely. By that, where you can almost foolproof yourself, right? Because we've had really good moments. The chicken people do it very well, as you said. The bread people did it very well. But I've seen times where I'm like, you can tell this one was a junior who thought, hey, this is fun.
I want to know the flops.
And throw it out there. Is there maybe too much wanting to be a real time in the moment brand where you do too much, where you I'm not saying every topic would become we could do something there, but where you trying to be too street? Because I saw one particular thread, for example, where I was actually quite annoyed, where you could see that the social media managers were actually just having a laugh, right?
Really?
So the fast food person from the Golden Arch just said something, and then the other guy from Wendy's came in, and then the other guy from whatever said something, and then now we're like, okay, now I need to follow this whole thread, and I'm annoyed because actually it's an inside joke, and we don't have the one fast food place here, or I don't eat enough fast food to get the story, or it's cars, and the Baki said to this other Baki, and you're like, but I don't know, there's too much.
Not culturally or locally relevant necessarily.
Maybe that's it, right? That it's maybe culturally and not locally relevant for the people who are around for you to get it. Because I sometimes feel that maybe the brands can just almost too much of a good thing and not know when to rein themselves in.
When to rein it in. It is a tough one, and again, I think it goes back to, again, I feel like such a broken record. But I think understanding your brand.
True.
But outside of understanding your brand, it's understanding that too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to overdo it because then people are going to lose interest. Consumers are smart, these guys. They can see through everything that's planned. They can see through it. They're like, you're trying to sell me this. This is too much. Or this was pre-planned. You guys did this and it ended up like this. They're smart. They can speak to it. And then you don't end up getting that engagement or that viral moment as you
shareability.
You
Exactly. So have you experienced some disasters or flops?
Some tartars.
So I haven't personally. I don't know if I can share this story. But it's not of me. It's a friend of mine.
We don't mention names, so we can just keep it anonymous.
Okay.
And then afterwards you can tell me all about
it. She was a bit more junior.
Okay.
It was when she just started, guys. This was in I think 2010s or something like that, right? And she was a social media manager, and it was the automobile industry.
Okay.
Yes.
And often when you're doing content plans, you're like, oh, okay, it's Valentine's Day, it's Mother's Day, it's Father's Day, whatever. Okay. I really hope. And then cool, they planned it, and then it was World AIDS Day. And it was fine. They had the content planned for it, but she said Happy World AIDS Day. And the social media manager was like, it's not happy. You can't.
But you see,
You can't. No, like retract. So luckily they caught it early. But she was like, "Oh, this is like we're part of the conversation." And you're like,
in the wrong way.
yeah, but she was still a junior.
But you know what? But so it goes directly to my next point, where I think we also need to realize that and you said it earlier about what platforms you use, right? You were saying about which vehicle you use, and I'll add on to that, like which platform you go to, because there are people who are more forgiving, like not X, right? But if you were to say like in a TikTok, you've got the room to almost explain. Like, Happy World AIDS Day, because as a country we've moved on these many leaps and bounds from where we were 20 years ago. You know what I mean? But in my mind, you can almost change the narrative to say we're commemorating how well we've done in dealing with the scourge. Yeah. Whereas I know what she meant, but I know how it translates.
Coming from a good place.
From a good
Exactly.
place, yeah.
Also, for me, if that had happened now, I think it would have picked up a lot quicker, and people would have been like,
absolutely.
She's already.
But I think what works well is, again, for me, honesty and transparency always. Like, don't blame the intern, whatever.
Yeah.
If, like, let's say that had happened now, what I would like to see if that did happen is maybe someone being like, guys, we've turned this into a learning lesson. This person has started. They were trying, and it didn't work out. We apologize, maybe, for the insensitivity of it.
Absolutely.
There was no harm meant at all. We're trying to grow our team and trust them with the jobs that we've hired them to do. Obviously, we don't want these things to happen, but they happen. And turn it into a learning moment. For me as a consumer, or even someone on social media, I appreciate that a lot more. If you just play open cards with me.
And if your brand is a brand that you've grown us to appreciate, that's not the right English, but you get me.
Got you.
Where the brand has grown in such a way that we're able to have a conversation where we're like, you know what, actually, this is Leroy, I'm the head of, like the particular bank that has the guy on Twitter. He's the guy we all complain to, or they complain to.
Yes.
And he can say, "Ooh, we missed it, hey? We really missed the moment."
But you see, some I think can. Well, I suppose it also boils down to your tonality, your way of putting it across.
Yeah, I love that we really have asked you the questions we've sent to you, because the conversation has been so wild. Because for me also, the thing about this is, and I think the reason why we're getting the fizz about it is, we're dealing on a daily basis in real time with things that are happening around us that are really, the age we're in right now is crazy. Like,
but there's so much noise.
There's so much going on.
You can actually get a headache.
And I'm loving that. I'm loving that you're able to put like sense into how you're able to seem like you're just a brand on the move, but it's because you've got the infrastructure in the background. And maybe chat to us about what have you put in place? I mean, you mentioned the fact that you have very open lines of communication with the client and whatever. And for me, particularly about the diversity of opinions, because that's where you almost go, Tami, friend, us as gay men, we don't say that. Or us as women, we don't do that. We're able to rein each other in. What kind of infrastructure would we need to have if it's not there just yet?
Do you mean in terms of like from an agency client perspective, or just in general?
Well, yeah. So just agency
what does it look
client.
like?
Yeah. So
resources on it.
Yeah. You're on Twitter tonight, and you see this morning, and there's a moment.
Who you contacting? What's happening?
On my side, if I see something, I am like, guys, internally, it would be so cool if we could do this. Just because, let's say it pertains to a specific client, and I'm like, how cool would it be if we could do this?
Yes.
That client might not be ready for that at all, right? So then it would be, they might not be ready for it. So it would be chatting about it internally first. And then saying, it would be really cool if in the next couple of months, kind of warm them up to the idea a little bit, And I think that's where that like trial and error behind the scenes kind of comes in, where you're like, oh, look what we could do. Also, obviously, if it speaks to you said it so nicely, the tonality of the brand, because not all brands are wanting to be part of that conversation. It doesn't work for them, and that's fine. You don't have to be. What works for you, and that's great. But if maybe they don't think it is, and you think it is, and you're like, it's a soft launch almost.
For sure.
You could launch it. Sorry. You could chat internally about it, and then maybe in like the next status meeting or meeting with the client, be like, look, we saw this happen. It would be a cool moment. It would have been a cool moment. What do you think about this?
Would you be open to
Yeah,
it?
because I think we also don't want to force things down clients' throats or brands' throats or anyone's throats, you know. We just want to, where you at with this? Is this something you've considered? Isn't it? Just slowly planting those seeds.
So I'm interested in terms of the rollout journey. I know we've got a few moments left. In terms of the rollout journey, so but that does actually get over the line. So like now, like now,
Like, okay, guys, got an hour.
Now. Okay, so you've seen something. You feel it would be relevant for the client. You chat internally, and then what? You propose it to the client.
Sure.
But this has to happen within
seconds, bro. Seconds.
Yeah.
Is this
So
like
what's the
if the
process?
client is on board for these kind of
So client is
moments?
happy with it. So client, you and client have done this before.
Okay. Then I think it's just honestly a matter of like you normally have open lines of like a WhatsApp group. Like, I mean, we're all on WhatsApp. It's usually like a WhatsApp group, and you're like, cool, this has happened. We've done this mock-up. This is what our messaging is.
Okay.
This is what our intention is. You put it in that WhatsApp group. They sign it off, or if they need someone else to sign it off, if it's something you're familiar with, and like that trial and error also comes with approval process, trial and error. So when it does come to this, it's like, guys, it's quick. We're going live now, done, dusted.
It's literally all done on WhatsApp, probably.
Yeah, I mean,
Literally.
and that's why I'm saying that for me, it's the fact that it's forced us to do everything on the fly, because I might have to approve it sitting at the airport. You might have to send it to me like a mock-up that doesn't even have the real product, like it's a stick drawing, you know. It might be having to go, what's it like? And you say, remember last year when we did that one? And you go, okay, run with that then. And then hoping when I land and I turn my phone on.
And also being like, and it's such a tough one, but I suppose it is, especially when working in digital, you online all the time. So even when my office hours are done, I'm still online.
Totally.
Especially with this kind of thing, in real time marketing and the newsjacking. It's like, just seen this, the client, okay, cool. Do I have Photoshop? Do I have Canva on my phone? Like, can I
You have Canva.
I also have on my exactly. And then just quickly being like, this is what we're thinking. If there are any changes. But I think it also takes like a team.
Yeah.
So it's your internal team. Obviously.
So who's the team?
I suppose the team that works on it, but also like your wider team, because oftentimes you might be like, oh, this is really cool, and then someone else is like, it would be even better if you do this, but we better even work on that client.
Let's add some more flavor.
Yeah, because I think opinions are always important, especially when you work on something. You get so tunnel vision, and you can see it one way, and just one little comment, and you're like, didn't even think of it.
And I think it goes to building really tight teams, right? But for me, before we let you go, Wilmarie, because we really could do this the whole afternoon.
I can be here the whole day.
I want to like be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, she take us to work next week. It's like we're going to be holding her hand throughout the meetings, because the real-time marketing, which is what we're chatting about right now mainly. But for me, the newsjacking is the more interesting one, right? Like taking a news story, and because news is very different to a moment. I mean, news usually is about a moment, but you can, when we go back to the little baby with the bread, right? That's not news. That's just a moment that someone took and posted it, and someone said, guys, look how cute, look how adorable it is, and we all ran with it. But, I was chatting to Tami about another a project we're playing on, and where you're seeing like lots of like politics going on, or like a politician says something completely wrong. And you are so aware that on X in particular, you can have the wrong messaging come out even in jest.
It would be an absolute and utter PR nightmare.
Well, small things like, for instance, being a white person having an opinion about a politician who just happens to be black. The race has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
But because there are people who are going to have an issue with the discussion generally,
I think you've probably got to be way more strategic with your newsjacking than... Yeah, I'd be, my anxiety.
I personally, specifically on Twitter, I don't comment on politics. It's just not a thing for me. That race element as well. I think from a brand perspective, or a story perspective, that's where the brand reputation or like the crisis comes in as well, from a quality check perspective, to be like, guys, cultural insensitivity. And I think that's one thing South Africa does really well in comparison to like America, where they're like, how did this get through? Was there no person of color on this board?
Not one.
Right? And I think here, like, everyone is so like, no, guys, we don't, because of our history, naturally, we're like, we don't want to come off, even if it is too hesitant or too safe, rather, because Twitter will cancel you so quick. They will come for you, but outside of them coming for you, that's going to then become the message.
Yeah, that's the story
what
now.
you tried to do is going to be planned. So sometimes it doesn't necessarily need a response. But if you're going to do it, it has to be very careful. And I think conversations with key stakeholders.
Absolutely.
That's where that diversity definitely is important, to be like, that messaging.
Not right.
I'm going to go with one more question before we leave, Wilmarie, because while we're on the idea of crisis comms, you're listening, you're socially listening, right? But there are moments that happen where you guys are like getting sprayed with the blood. In Zulu, we say, basically,
that sounds hectic.
so basically, you are being smeared with the fat of the meat you didn't eat.
Ooh,
so you are the scapegoat.
Yes.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll be doing a campaign with brand A, and I'll do something really silly, and then they'll go, Brand A, did you know that Leroy is homophobic, transphobic, da 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 da? You are now almost having to crisis comms with your social listening, right? You have to go, okay, we need to have a moment where we reply to this real quickly in a hurry. So that infrastructure also works where you're not trying to get in the affirmative, but also trying to go, we don't run with that. This is our brand position, even in crisis comms. Yeah,
100%. That process is still in place, and I think a lot of WhatsApp conference calls are taking place, or like Zoom meetings where it's like, guys, now like send a link or like jump onto another link that we were on a previous meeting on. We need to discuss this, and then it's
hectic.
If
Can you
we
imagine
respond,
you like on the treadmill now? No, it's just.
But no, really, like there's been times where that happens, and you're like, I'm so sorry, guys, I need to just step away. But your guys is you because you're on the treadmill. You're like, it's because you can't plan for that.
No.
Like you don't know, like people do things,
But don't you feel like you have to be on call 24/7?
24/7.
Yeah.
But I think I'm lucky I don't specifically work in crisis comms.
Yes.
But I mean, outside of that, social listening is still social listening.
Yes.
But I think, it's not like I log in at 9, switch off
No
at 5.
ways.
Because if something happens and your expertise is needed, you
I
step
suppose
in.
it's like being a journalist and something happens and you've got to get up at 2 a.m. and run to the side.
Or a doctor, like who's on call.
Yeah.
Like, their shift is over, but then it's like there's an emergency pulled through. Like there's always going to be usually, I mean, I guess it depends who you are crisis comming.
Yeah.
Well, I've always said that we don't save lives here, but we actually do. We're on call like doctors here. So we've had an interesting roundtable with Wilmarie. I've loved it. I cannot thank you enough for coming through the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
It had us in the fizz. Please let us know what we should be chatting about. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell at the top so you can get info when we drop new content. This has been the Business of Influence podcast, chatting all things about real-time marketing and newsjacking, the digital agent, everything in between, and fancy jackets and looking pretty. But more importantly, we're trying to make this business of influence be a business that makes money for all of us. So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.